The single greatest mystery in Star Wars is about Yoda's species. Despite all the content, we know very little about Yoda and Grogu and even Yaddle. This may be deliberate, of course, but are you like me and want to know more? Perhaps about their biology? Let's talk about it. Hey fellow Star Wars fans, thanks for joining me here on the Nerdy Naturalist channel, where we examine the biology of all things pop. I'm Dr. Ped Danishkar, and I want to talk to you about Yoda biology. It's true, we know very little about Yoda and Grogu compared to other important characters in the Star Wars universe, but we can take hints from canon and connect that to life on Earth to come up with some conclusions about their biology, so let's dive in. When Yoda passed away in Return of the Jedi, he was said to be over 900 years old. Can you imagine 900 years? That's old. On Earth, the animals with the longest lifespans are glass sponges and black corals, which can age into the thousands, but they don't move or have a backbone. Greenland sharks are the longest living vertebrates on Earth, aging up to 400 years. Scientists explain their longevity by the fact that the sharks live in cold water, which slows down metabolic processes. I imagine that Yoda must have had a slow metabolism which allowed him to get so old. One would think a species that can live to be 900 years old would also develop and mature slowly. This seems the case with Grogu. When we first encounter Grogu, he's reported to be about 50 years old, but also seems to have the maturity of a human toddler. Toddlers are capable of walking and climbing. They can listen and interpret, but their language skills are fairly limited. There's evidence that Yoda reached maturity at 100 years, which is when he started training Jedi. Comparable to Yoda and Grogu, some mammals have slow development as well. Elephants mature around 16-17 years old, while blue whales mature around 15. One could argue that humans mature the slowest, with individuals continually growing and maturing into their 20s. Of course, reaching maturity can be viewed in two different ways: the point when an animal stops growing, or when the animal is first capable of reproduction. Our friends I mentioned before, the Greenland shark, don't reach sexual maturity until about 150 years. That's a long time to wait to have babies. And speaking of babies, where did Grogu come from? Who are his parents? There's lots of theories on this, but we don't have any info about how his species reproduces. What we do know is that there are two sexes thanks to Yaddle's first appearance in The Phantom Menace. Two sexes would suggest that sexual reproduction occurs between male and female. With sexual reproduction, gametes like sperm and eggs from two parents combine in a fertilization event to become a zygote. There's no evidence that Yoda and Yaddle ever got together. Some theorists say that Yoda's species may reproduce asexually. I'm not sure, but if they did, it may be through parthenogenesis, where a female produces an embryo without fertilizing an egg with sperm. You may have heard about the round stingray named Charlotte, who in an aquarium in North Carolina became a mother completely on her own. Parthenogenesis in higher animals often is triggered when the animal is under stress. What could have been stressing Yaddle? To try and figure out what kind of species both Yoda and Grogu are, we should consider habitat, diet, and anatomy. Habitat is another thing we don't know about Yoda and Grogu. What planet are they from? If we knew that, we would understand more about their habitat. After the events of Order 66, Yoda retreated to Dagobah, a planet that essentially is covered in swamp, so that may be their preferred habitat. Swamp life requires good camouflage, which may explain Yoda's green skin. Swamp animals can move through water. Think of frogs and alligators. The mammals that live in swamps are usually fab swimmers too, like otters and nutria. Throughout The Mandalorian, we see Grogu feeding on amphibious creatures. In Empire Strikes Back, Yoda prepares and eats root leaf stews. Eating both plants and animals suggests that members of Yoda's species are omnivores. Omnivores generally have two types of teeth: sharp front teeth, like canines for tearing and piercing flesh, and also molars for grinding plant material. We have seen that both Yoda and Grogu have sharp teeth in the front. Plant material is harder to digest than meat, so herbivores and omnivores must have fully developed stomachs and intestines. The more plants in the diet, the longer the intestines tend to be. Another dietary consideration here is that Grogu may have needed a more protein-based diet in his early development, while Yoda did not, which may be why there is a transition to a plant-based diet. Similarly, hoverflies feed on other bugs as larvae, as carnivores, but then transition to nectar as adults. Based on their green skin, one would think that Yoda and Grogu are either amphibious or reptilian. Generally, all green-colored terrestrial animals on Earth are either amphibians or reptiles. Their green color is mostly for camouflage, which I mentioned before, for swamp life. The thing that's contradictory here is that Yoda, Grogu, and Yaddle all have some hair, which is a mammalian feature. There aren't any examples of green mammals. Some unnaturally green mammals have been observed, like the polar bear in the zoo in Japan. Some algae got trapped inside the hollow hairs of the polar bear. Polar bears have hollow hairs as an adaptation for trapping heat. It is a little odd that Grogu has considerably larger eyes than both Yoda and Yaddle. I'm not sure how to explain this. The larger eyes certainly make him cuter, and his look may have been inspired by tarsiers. It's possible that his eyes would stay the same size as he matures while his head grows a little larger to compensate for this discrepancy. Large front-facing eyes are characteristic of predatory animals. Predators have front-facing eyes in order to focus on prey during hunting. Contradictory to the predatory eyes are Yoda's large ears. Large ears are often a feature of prey animals. Think of deer and rabbits. They need to hear well in order to escape from being hunted and killed. Yoda's species are similar to rabbits in that we see auricular mobility, the ability for the ears to move. We see this in both prey and predators. Grogu's ears are expressive. Cats also express their moods with their ears. Ears pointed down mean a scaredy cat, while ears facing forward mean a focused cat. Our green fins have 3 digits on each hand and foot, which would have them labeled as tridactyls. There are claws on both their hands and feet. When you hear someone say 3 toes with claws, you may think of the 3-toed sloth, which uses its claws to climb and pull. Sloths are slow and deliberate, which seems to be what we saw from both Yoda and Grogu. Sloths are slow because of their reduced metabolism. We saw that Yoda wasn't slow in battle, when suddenly he was agile and could hop and flip around. Their ability to hop around would suggest that underneath their robes, Yoda and Grogu have some powerful legs. Ironically, most animals with a good jumping ability tend to have long legs or stretchy tendons like kangaroos and frogs. Yoda and Grogu seem to have short legs. Of course, what makes Yoda the ultimate Jedi is his strong connection to the Force, which all 3 examples of his rare species in canon seem to have. They also seem to have high intelligence. Perhaps they have large, more evolved brains. Intelligence on Earth is a feature in mammals primarily due to their enlarged brains. We have discussed several attributes which fit Yoda and Grogu into several different animal vertebrate classes. The hair, development, and intelligence have them being mammal-like, while their habitat, skin, and other anatomical features suits them to be more like reptiles or amphibians. The beauty of these great characters is that they cannot be siloed into any particular class. Perhaps we should create a new class for them. Meptiles? Herpimals? It seems there will always be some mystery behind these characters, which is cool. It's what makes them intriguing. This was a fun little dive into Star Wars biology. Please like and subscribe for more biological analysis of Star Wars.